Even though Evelyn is still a couple of weeks away, we do have the chance to play her in-game now as a trial character. This is great as it gives everyone a chance to try out Evelyn before her banner arrives. However, there are two very important things that a lot of people are overlooking, which probably makes Evelyn feel a little bit weaker than she actually is. And it doesn't help that the trial version of Evelyn isn't properly built, and even that the little guide that the devs themselves include to teach you how to play Evelyn also overlook both of these important bits. The first is her skill. As a quick breakdown, the first time that you use it, Evelyn will bind herself to a target enemy, which you can see thanks to the very visible wire. Whenever she is in this binding seal state, she gets bonus crit rate thanks to her core passive. Now, the next time that you press the skill button while you are in this binding seal state, whether it's an EX skill or a regular skill, she does that grouping attack where she swoops around, strings together a bunch of enemies, and then snaps her fingers to do some damage. I think this is what a lot of people got really excited about. Seeing that animation, seeing the grouping, and then, getting those wipeout screens with that finger snap always seems really cool. But there is actually so much more to this skill that makes Evelyn much more fun to play, and also makes her do way more damage. If you were to read the detailed description of the skill, you can see that using a basic attack can cancel the finger snap detonation and go directly into the third hit of her basic attack string. This sounds so simple, but this makes a huge impact on how you play Evelyn. Normally, if you were to let the skill go uninterrupted, when she snaps her fingers to do the detonation, this actually breaks the binding, causing her to leave the binding seal state, which means that she no longer has that crit rate buff. And so now, you would have to use the skill again just to re-enter the bound state. And there's no EX version of that skill for this version of the attack when you're still entering the binding state. So even if you have enough energy, you have to waste time using the skill just to get the crit rate buff back again. And what's more, the detonation damage isn't even that much. You could argue that maybe the damage is good enough if you have the energy for an EX version of it, and if there are enough enemies grouped together that the collective AoE damage is then worth it. But against a single enemy, it is much more efficient to use the skill and then cancel out of it with a basic attack. And speaking of, let's talk about that basic attack. Evelyn has a 5-hit string, like most agents, and the first 2 hits are physical, while the third onward deal fire damage. And as usual, the early hits are the weakest while the later hits get stronger and stronger the later in the chain you go. So, being able to skip the first 2 hits and constantly attack using the harder hitting fire attacks is huge. Yanagi has something similar where, after doing her little pull dance thrust down, she enters a special state that lets her skip her first 2 hits as long as you keep attacking. And that was a big reason why Yanagi felt like she was able to do so much damage and apply shock so quickly, because she didn't have to waste time on those first 2 hits whenever she attacked. At least back when we were still using Yanagi as a sort of on-field agent before Miyabi came around. So ideally, the gameplay loop with Evelyn is to first enter the binding state, just pressing her skill normally, and then you would use the skill again, but you would cancel the detonation with a basic attack to jump straight into the 3rd, 4th, and then 5th hits of her basic combo. And then at the end of that combo, you can use the skill once again, cancelling it with the basic attack again, creating a much stronger loop where you're combining the best of both worlds. You're getting the strong hit where you're binding them with the skill, but you're sacrificing that weak detonation damage to jump directly into the harder hitting basic attacks and not wasting time on those weaker hits. And you get to do all of this while maintaining that crit rate buff because you are staying in that binding seal state. This is also a much better way to build up her garrote meter, to be able to build up her stacks, to use those held basics, which will eventually lead to being able to cheat out an extra chain attack. And speaking of the chain attack, this is something that you may have noticed yourself if you have tried out Evelyn in these trials. You might have found yourself using the chain attack and then getting hit and thinking to yourself, wait, why did I get hit there? You're meant to be invulnerable during a chain attack, aren't you? Is there a desync in her invincibility? Why am I getting hit? I feel like I should have dodged that or something, right? Well, unfortunately, no, I am sad to say that this is not a bug, but this is actually a feature, a built-in intended mechanic in the game. In the description itself of Evelyn's bind passive, it says that the extra chain attack caused when you have stacks of burning tether has a lower interrupt level than the regular chain attack. This is why you are sometimes hit during that last bit of the animation, because you are not invulnerable like you are for a regular chain attack. Speaking of getting hit when you feel like you shouldn't, another thing that you may have noticed was that another selling point to Evelyn was that you could use her skill as a sort of parry. allowing her to dodge an attack and then still use her skill, similar to how Caesar can parry incoming attacks. But in practice, you may have also felt like you should have dodged an attack, but ended up getting hit, and you're thinking to yourself, is there a weird delay? I'm sure I pressed the skill button, right? And then this comes back around to the earlier point of cancelling her skill. You can only perform the dodge with her skill mechanic if it is the version where she is already in the binding state. If you are not already in the binding state and you try to use the skill to dodge, you are technically speaking using a completely different version of the attack that does not allow you to dodge incoming hits. This is even more of a reason as to why it is so important to cancel the finger snap with a basic attack so that you maintain the binding seal state. I think one of the big mechanics behind Evelyn, if you want to do a lot of damage with her, is using those brief windows where you're about to get attacked, using that skill to dodge while still doing damage. And again, if you're not in that binding seal state, then you're just gonna have to do a regular dodge or a switch out. And then lastly, just as a sort of personal note, but once I realized these two mechanics, less so the chain attack one, but more about the skill and using the cancelling into the basic attack while maintaining the buff and still being able to use the proper EX version of the skill from now on, I went back and I tried out the trial stages again with Evelyn, and she became so much more fun to play. Weaving in her skill and basic attacks between each other, actually getting to do the proper dodge attack with her skill and not, randomly getting hit because I wasn't actually in the binding seal state. It made it so much more fun. And again, this is with a trial character. So imagine what a built Evelyn could do. And actually, speaking of, if you would like to see what a stronger Evelyn could do with a proper team and a disc setup and whatnot, consider clicking the subscribe button down below to be notified for when my in-depth creator server guide on Evelyn does come out. Otherwise though, this was just a friendly little PSA. And so now with this knowledge, hopefully I implore you, go and try out Evelyn again, and you'll see that she's much more fun to play in those trials. I know it might be difficult to try and convince some of you guys out there, especially now that we know that Anby and Trigger are coming up on the horizon in 1.6, so maybe a lot of you have already written off Evelyn as somebody that you want to get. And you know what? That's perfectly fine, that's understandable. If there's somebody that you enjoy more, I'm not forcing you to pull for Evelyn, but I will just say, try her out. You never know. First impressions matter a lot, and I think a lot of people tried her out in that first trial and thought that she was weak. One, because she is a trial character, and two, because of the weird chain attack stuff, and then also because they probably just weren't playing her properly, and I won't fault them for that. The game doesn't even let you know unless you go into the skill description itself and then see that you can cancel the attacks, and then you actually yourself have to go and piece together the fact that, oh, I should be cancelling the attacks so I can stay in the binding state, because that then gives me extra crit rate. But again though, even if that is not enough to convince you, like I said, wait until the creator server guide comes out and you can see a lot more in-depth details and possible team combinations. And then also, furthermore, if you are still on the fence about getting Evelyn or Soldier Anby, you can wait until the 1.6 live stream to find official details about her kit, and then you can make the comparison and decide whether or not you want to pull for Evelyn or Soldier Anby. But otherwise though, if you found this video helpful, liking, commenting and subscribing is greatly appreciated. So until next time though, bye bye!